2AM net will begin in approximately 2 minutes. KC9UDX net control here. Good evening. This is KC9UDX. My name is Matt and I welcome you to the 2AM net. The purpose of this net is to promote the use of amplitude modulation and also to establish this part of this band as a place for AM activity in this area. Everyone is invited to listen. Licensed amateurs who can do so legally are encouraged to check in. We listen in the AM mode and transmit in the AM mode where possible. If you cannot transmit in AM, we encourage you to listen in AM and transmit in FM. If you are transmitting in FM, please adjust your transmit frequency a couple kcs above or below from our receive frequency. This facilitates the use of slope detection, that is, demodulating your FM signal with our AM receivers. When checking in, please announce your call sign in standard phonetics. Again, this is KC9UDX. My name is Matt and I will now begin accepting check-ins. Any station wishing to check in, please come now. Not hearing anyone yet. Do we have anybody who wants to check into the 2AM net here on the 11th of August? This is KC9UDX calling the 2AM net. Anybody wants to check into the 2AM net, come now please. We're going to have a very short net here with no check-ins. Anybody wants to check into the 2AM net, come now. This is KC9UDX, and this is the 2AM net, or will be if we get any check-ins. Anybody wants to check into the 2AM net, come now please.
Whiskey Bravo 9, Bravo, Whiskey Papa.
Alright, we got one. There's Dave, WB9BWP. Welcome, Dave. Do we have anybody else? Alright, hearing none. I thought I was going to have to give up here, Dave. I'll turn it over to you, WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Well, Frank is usually pretty prompt, so I guess he's not around tonight. And Jerry actually spoke up about the net first on Friday night, before I did, so I figured, he'd be here all raring to go. But anyway, I'm here. Everything still works. That's a good sign. I added some guy wires to the VHF map this week, and I got the 160 meter inverted L up. A friend of mine came over, and he was up on the roof for me and helped with the lifting. The L, it shares the feed point and the radial with butternut vertical. I read about that a number of years ago. A guy that added it onto his vertical, and I thought, hey, I'll give that a try. It works. So I'm getting closer to getting everything back in place. There's still a little bit of tweaking to do on the butternut. They're always a complicated tune, and a lot of fix this, tweak this. Oh no, mess that up. Okay, go back, fix that. Oh no, go back and do the first one again. So I'm still playing. I've got 12 and 17 meters left on that, and then we get to the directional antenna, and then I'll have everything back to where it was a little more than a year ago. Yeah, good planning, I guess, on my part. That's okay. I'm still working on those power supplies that I offered to fix for someone else, and that's somewhere around a year on that one. So don't ever take me up on any offers about, I can fix that, or I can help you out with that. Anyway, I'm still here. I was at the dentist today for just the normal tune-up, but they found a small cavity that play with in a couple weeks. And he says, I got to pay some of the bills around here, so got to find something wrong. Anyhow, I'll send it back and see if anybody else made it. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. Yeah, we'll have to assume that Frank had something better to do. It happens. He's here every month. I can't expect him to be here all the time. Everybody's got other stuff to do once in a while. So, and Jerry not being here might be my fault. I normally send him a reminder email, and I've been so busy messing around with YouTube this afternoon that I completely forgot to do that. Fine business on the antennas. I was out in the yard today looking up at my few remaining antennas, and I'm not sure if it's this recent windstorm that we had or just other stuff going on. Maybe because I relocated my guy wires when I did my roof. My 2-meter antenna, which I'm using right now, is starting to lean pretty good. So I'm going to have to readjust those guys, and hopefully I can straighten that thing out. Otherwise, I got to add some more guys or take it down and rebuild it a different way or something. But I can't complain. It's been up there a long time. I've completely lost track of how many years it's been now. It's well more than 5. And it was only intended to be temporary, just to prove that I could build it that way. It wasn't actually... I didn't build it to be long term. It just ended up that way. I can certainly relate with the power supplies. I've got stuff piled up here like you wouldn't believe. I do not take on anybody else's projects just for this reason. I have piles and piles of my own stuff that desperately needs to be worked on, and nothing ever gets done around here. I've got to finish my bench before I start working on anything that goes on a bench, and that project is going on 3 years now, I think. And it's not going anywhere right now. it's going to be a while before I get a chance to work on that again. And you went to the dentist. I haven't been to a dentist. I'm trying to think here. I'll bet it was 1995 the last time I went to a dentist. I don't actually know why. I have no idea why, but I've never had any problems with my teeth other than alignment. I've got a pretty severe overbite, but it's not a problem. And other than that, I've never had any issues with my teeth. I only went in 1995 to have my wisdom teeth pulled, and that was not a tooth issue. You know, most people have problems with their teeth getting compacted in the back, and I did not have that problem at all. The problem I had was that the gums were growing over the top of the teeth and getting infected, so I had those pulled out, and that's the only thing I think I've ever had done on my teeth, other than I think I was 5 years old when I had to have one of my front teeth pulled out. But that's it. I guess who knows what the future will bring, but it's been 5 decades of zero problems, I guess. Anyway, I did some tinkering with YouTube today. They keep hounding me to quit using their old method of streaming, which I've been relying on exclusively for this net. And now they're saying they're going to discontinue that by the end of summer. They don't give it a specific date. So I've been getting serious about getting something else to work here. It's either that or take this stream offline. I hate to do that. I really don't want to invest in any new hardware. So I've got to cobble together some issues. And I've actually got 2 different computers running the live stream right now. One of them is the one with the camera hooked up, and it's sending the video stream to YouTube. And I've got another computer that's actually controlling the stream. And I tried this method back in December, and I don't know if, Dave, you were around that month or if you recall this, but the streaming was happening and it was working, but the stream was not going anywhere anybody could find on YouTube. I couldn't find it myself. Nobody else could find it. And so I don't know where that video went. It might still be out there somewhere. I have no idea, but it did not end up on my channel. And I was sort of having that problem at the beginning today when I was playing around with this stuff, but YouTube seems to have changed their interface a little bit, and I think something must be different because now it just works. It works awkwardly, but it works. And actually, I made a mistake earlier of turning on 3D video just to see what would happen when I was testing stuff out, and that setting seems to have persisted. So now, if you look at the video tonight for the live stream, it's 3D, but I don't have a 3D camera, so you can sort of pan around my radio, I guess, but the quality is just pitiful because it's not 3D. Obviously I'd have to stop the stream if I wanted to turn that off, and I don't dare do that because I doubt I could get it going again. So that's the story with that. Let's see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. Hearing none. Bratwurst Joe had commented on one of my test videos earlier, so I assumed he would be around here tonight, but he must have more important things to do too. I guess it's not terribly surprising. It's a nice summer day, and summer is winding down, so I guess people are going to be finding things to do outside. So with that, I'll send it back to you, Dave, WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Yeah, it is August already. I'm still working on trying to understand that part, but that I guess happens as people age, clocks start spinning faster. It was an old boss that I had once. He made a comment that time goes faster as you get older because South Carolina, I think, north of South Carolina. He's like 87 years old on wife number 5. So I guess he knew something about life. We'll see if I only have one wife, but we'll see if I make it anywhere near that age. Monday nights I frequently check into MSOENet, and Jack, W9ULA, is sometimes net control over there. I think he said he just hit 88, which is 15 miles a day on the bicycle and other things like that. And I hear that, and it's like, well, gee, I couldn't do that when I was 28, let alone. Anyway, this last weekend was a virtual hamfest. An outfit called QSO Today. I'm not real sure what they do. I think they're a podcast, but I don't really know. But they made a lot of noise with this virtual hamfest thing. So I signed up for that, spent a couple of hours listening to some talks. And they were using, I don't know what it's called, but it's some sort of a platform that's made for like a virtual trade show kind of thing. And you actually walk into an auditorium, and there's a list of speakers that were happening. And then there's the exhibit hall where there actually were various vendors, and you could pan around the exhibit hall and stop at a vendor and see whatever they had to say or show. Or frequently, I think it's just because this was new for everybody, frequently it just took you to the vendor's website. Sometimes they had special demos running, and you could chat with representatives of that and of the vendor. But they still have the talks are still available for like 30 days or something, and I actually watched one a little bit before I came down here today. So that was an interesting thing, and I'm sure even when the world kind of gets back to normal in quotation marks, I guess, I bet this kind of thing will still continue. Earlier this year, I spent a couple of hours watching some of the talks from Contest University, which is a thing that they always run the day before Dayton Hamvention. And it's an extra cost thing, and, it's another day. You spend a day in a hotel meeting room kind of thing. But this year, because Dayton wasn't happening, they made it free, and all the talks were available. And so, I got to see stuff that I probably wouldn't ever, because I don't know that I'd pay the extra money and spend the extra time just to sit for this extra day listening to any of those people. So, some of these things are kind of handy, or they're making things available that you wouldn't normally have. So I guess that's kind of neat. I forget what they said, how many people were signed up. It was in the thousands for this past weekend. And it was interesting too. Most of the talks, the speakers' talks, they were a pre-recorded thing, generally a slideshow type of thing, with maybe it would have a small window in the corner where you guys saw the person actually speaking. And then they would have questions and answers after the presentation, and if you click on, I want to see the question and answer thing, that would actually fire up a Zoom conference, and you were there seeing the guy in his bedroom, office, living room, whatever, and he's answering questions. They'd have a moderator or two, and one that I was at fielding questions besides the Zoom things. They would take text chats and stuff too. Anyway, it was kind of interesting. A couple more talks I still might try to hit up here this week. And boy, that was a long stretch there. That gives the other guys a chance to get their radio fired up. So I'll send it back to you, Matt. This is
right, thank you, Dave. And I'll tell you what, I always kid around with people about this. You know, it's especially last week. I think it was starting to seem like September. I always call it September. We seem to be getting these early autumns that last a lot longer, which doesn't bother me at all. You were talking about how it's August already, and I just keep saying it's September. And I was just outside today noticing that my wife was pointing out that there are no mosquitoes. And she thinks it's because the neighbors have all sprayed for mosquitoes. We have not, but everybody else around us did. And I think maybe that's part of it, but I'd almost bet that part of it is too that fall is coming, if not already here. We've got a tree turning colors already, and just based on the things my wife is growing in the garden, it's pretty obvious that fall is coming early. What else was I going to say? Oh, this stuff with the virtual Hamfest and all of this online stuff, it's kind of strange. You know, what I think about when I see a lot of these things is how much better this stuff could all be and how much more we could all do if our computers weren't all so slow and bloated. I think about this all the time. I operate computers here that run 1 megahertz, less than 1 megahertz, 50 megahertz, and I also have a couple of computers that do a couple of gigabytes, or gigahertz, I should say, not gigabytes, but you know, everybody's got computers that do multiple gigahertz, and there's not that much speed difference. It's not 1,000 times or whatever it should be. It's not even close. And just doing day-to-day things, it's actually slower on the faster computers. And if these faster computers weren't so, well, I think I already said that, you know, if they weren't so bloated and slow like that, just imagine the kinds of things we could actually get done. I guess I can't quite picture what a virtual Hamfest would be like. I probably should check that out. And this past weekend, when that was going on, we were in Wisconsin Dells. We went there sort of to celebrate my youngest son's birthday and sort of just to kind of get away from everyday life here. And it's kind of interesting to think about this, kind of like this virtual Hamfest thing. You know, things are very different thanks to all this COVID stuff. And as bad as a lot of it is, there are some side benefits. Some of these things you just couldn't do otherwise, I guess. For us in Wisconsin Dells, you know, it's very different atmosphere there. Noah's Ark, the big attraction there, is I would say the biggest attraction in the summer, is closed for the year, and that displaces a lot of people. A lot of the people that we ran into, you could hear them talking about how they don't normally go to the Dells in the summer at all. They normally go in the winter. And I guess that's true for us too. That's the first time we've gone there in the summer. So a lot of things are different. You brought up Jack, W9ULA. It's good to hear he's still doing that stuff. You sure, I haven't talked to him in years, but you sure would never guess he was 88 years old talking to him on the air. And especially hearing about all the things that he does. That's always amazing. Well, I got some other things to talk about here, but I'll see if we got any more check-ins first. Do we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net? Come now, please.
K9FI check-in. Good evening, everybody.
There's Jerry, K9FI. Welcome, Jerry. Do we have anybody else? Hearing none, I will turn it over to you, Jerry, K9FI from KC9UDX.
Okay, Matt. I don't know who's on, but Excuse me, I got my little cough yet. But it's nice to hear everybody. And by the way, you have a nice signal tonight. We're down by my grandson and his family for my granddaughter's birthday. And we went down there at 5 and we left about... He lives down in Vernon. So we drove back and got here about 5 after 8. By the time I got downstairs, it was 8:15, and I was listening to you guys talk about all your adventures and stuff. And we haven't gone anywhere this year except basically the only person we see is my son and his family. Otherwise, we haven't been out with much of a group at all. And not been going out to lectures or anything, or breakfast or any of that stuff yet. I think we'll be sticking around home until November, I assume, and see what happens then. See how it is. Otherwise, I'll just continue doing what I'm doing because it isn't all that much different than retirement. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Matt, and see what else is on the deck. K9FI.
All right, thank you, Jerry. And your signal is way up this month too. I've probably mentioned this before. I don't have an S meter. I've got a 0 to 10 gauge. And normally you are a pretty consistent 4.5, and tonight you're a 5.5. But what's strange is every once in a while your signal drops sharply to about a 4.25, and then a little while goes by and it comes back up. I'm not sure if that's really on your end or if that's something between here and there getting in the way. It sort of sounds like that. And if you went to Vernon, you very likely drove right past my house. I live just north of Vernon, and I live on the road that everybody takes to get there, especially now with all the strange construction going on around here. I live about 2 miles north of the Vernon Marsh. And now I was going to say something else here, and I completely forgot what I was going to say. I was writing things down, and I, for some reason, stopped doing that. So let's see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. All right, hearing none. Oh, that's the other thing you asked, Jerry. It's Dave, WB9BWP, myself, and you, and that is it. So kind of a slow month here, but we'll take it. There were many months where there was only 2 of us anyway. It's been years now, but that used to be pretty much the norm. In fact, there was one year when almost all year we didn't have anybody checking into the net here. So we'll go back to the top of the list. Dave, WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Well, hello to Jerry, if you can hear me. I quick fired up YouTube so I could hear him, because all I was getting is just some sound over here. And you're S7 here on the meter, Matt. TS2000, which I think Jerry's using too. And I guess signals are about the same as they have been on this end, at least. You mentioned the computer stuff, and yeah, you're right. I remember way back, I had a Radio Shack color computer, and I bought some software that is pretty much equivalent to Microsoft Office. I think it was like $50. Ran on a floppy. Did everything that you can do with Office today, and did it probably about as fast or faster. And did it in a whole lot less memory besides using just a floppy. I forget what I had in there for RAM. Certainly not what I've got today. I put a new a PC together beginning of the year. I've got 32 gigs of RAM in it. The one down here, which was my office computer, this only has 16 gigs. I mean, this computer I think had, I don't remember now. I think it was measured in K, actually. But like I said, the software lot of it is programmers of the time were a lot different than programmers of today, and especially as you sit down and say you're a guy out there to write software, and then you sit down and you think, well, gee, look at the clock speeds on that machine, look how much memory there is. I don't have to bother trying to be neat or tight or anything like that. I'll just let the stuff fly and see what happens. And I actually think that's a lot of what we've got. But it keeps some of these places in business, I guess. Anyway, I won't go off on a big rambling thing. Since now there's somebody else here too. So I'll send it back to Ned. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave, and don't worry about rambling. That's kind of what we're here for. We do have the time. Your signal is, I'll call it a 5 1/4. It's precisely where it always is. It never changes. So, at least as long as I've been looking back here, the band conditions haven't changed a whole lot. Well, I see one here. I have a 6. So I guess maybe the band was a little bit more open that night. But normally you're exactly 5 1/4. So that's very consistent. The color computer. I remember when those first came out. I was a Commodore 64 user at the time, and I just remember thinking, well, this is just a poor attempt at latching onto the Commodore 64 success with a similar spec machine, and it really isn't. It's spec a lot better than the Commodore 64. If I recall, I think it's got a 6809 in it. It probably runs 4 megahertz, which, well, I guess that probably puts it just about as fast as a sub 1 megahertz Commodore 64, maybe a little bit faster. The 6502, if I recall, is a little bit faster than, or quite a bit faster than the 6809. But the 6809 is no slouch either. And if I had to guess on the RAM, I would say it maybe had 128K. I'd be shocked if it had 256. 256K at that time is like Macintosh or Amiga territory. And as far as gigabytes, I don't think I own anything with more than 4 gigabytes. Well, I shouldn't say that. Of course, I have all these Android devices that all have 64 and 128 gigabyte SD cards. But as far as desktop computers and things like that, 4 gigabytes is probably the most I have. I might have one with 6. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. And you know that I think part of what happens with, like what you're talking about with software development, I forget who it was. Somebody was famous for making this quote, that good enough is better than making it really good, because you end up with feature creep and all kinds of other problems. And so I think a lot of software developers strive to be just barely good enough. Especially these days when it doesn't cost anything to update. You don't have to make new floppy disks and convince people to buy them or mail them out to them at your own cost. You can just rely on the fact that anybody can get an update anytime, I guess. And that's another problem. There's no real incentive to make software work. You can always just rely on updates. And with that, we'll go to Jerry, K9FI, from KC9UDX.
Okay, Matt. Well, K9FI, I can't hear Dave tonight. I can hear him in the weeds. That's about where he's at. So, sorry about that, Dave. You make comments to Matt, you can even hear me, because it might be the same way on both sides. When I was working, one of the fellows I worked with, when we were talking about computers, Charlie would say, one thing about when you do computers with these large drives and large memory systems, they get really sloppy on how they write the program. And then, of course, like you say, now when you get a new program out, the and let the people find the bugs in it and sort it out and make upgrades and let everybody else do the work, which should have been done in the first place. So that's kind of annoying. Well, anyhow, one thing I found out today is technicians now have HF privileges. I'm sure happy that ARL did that, because I thought it was I don't like that they did it, but I don't have a whole lot of choice in the matter. So they got privileges on 40 and 80 and 15 now, so, and a whole bunch of other digital stuff too. And it's interesting, I don't know if it's got actually any exclusive CW areas anymore. So anyhow, that's about it. From here, I'll turn it back to you, Matt. K9FI.
All right, thank you, Jerry. I guess I'm kind of sorry to hear that. I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it happened. I guess that's my own fault for not reading up on these things, but you know, it seems kind of like we already don't have enough incentive to keep learning. And I have been arguing for a long time that giving technicians HF privileges was going the wrong direction. I think they should have started a new license class lower than technician, whether you call it novice or call it something else, where the only privileges they have is on VHF FM. I think you could make the entry requirements much lower and get a lot more people on the air really quickly. But I could be wrong and everybody else is right, so we'll see how that goes, I guess. I don't ever seem to get on HF anymore anyway. Dave, earlier you were talking about antennas for 12 and 17 meters. I don't know that I have ever been on those bands at all. I can sure listen there, although strangely I've got a transceiver here. It's a KW transceiver, not Kenwood, KW Electronics. KW2000A is the model number on it. I've got to rebuild the power supply, so it's not operational. It's been this way for years, unfortunately. By the time I get the power supply working, I'm going to have to rebuild the entire transceiver, I think. But it has some quirks of the receiver where I can receive some of those WARC bands, even though it's not designed to do that. I don't exactly remember how to do it, but I know I can do it. Something I always wanted to do, and I've got the radio here to do it. I wanted to take a TR3 and convert it just for some of those WARC bands, take away some of the other bands that are on it, and have that side by side with the standard one. Just as a fun project, I think. Well, someday I'll get back on HF. We'll see. Someday I'll have time, whether it's a good thing or not. And I was looking at what I wrote down here. I was going to comment on something else, and again I neglected to write that down. Listening and paying attention and not writing down is not a good thing. I start talking and I start forgetting. And Jerry, you said that you cannot hear Dave. I don't think Dave can hear you either, or he can maybe barely hear you, but I know he said he turned on YouTube to be able to hear you, and that's something that if you have a computer handy, you could do that too. It's got to be awkward. I have not done it myself. It has to be a little awkward because there's a probably 30-second delay on YouTube, but at least then you can hear everything that I can hear just the way I can hear it pretty much. With that, we're at the bottom of the list. Do we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net? Come now, please. Well, hearing none, we'll go back to the top of the list. Dave, WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Yeah, I'm using YouTube for Jerry. And I just did some quick checks here. I know that ARL is wanted to expand the HF privileges for techs. Right now, a tech has the same privileges on HF as novices used to. And ARL's been talking about trying to expand on that. Stand by just a moment here while I clear my throat. Okay, I'm back. But I don't think that's happened yet. I know that every once in a while people start talking like, oh, look, this happened, but I don't think it has yet. But I know they've been talking about it for probably a couple of years. They have a safety plan. I'm not sure if they actually did the for real submission. I think they're waiting for FCC to do something with it. But tech has HF privileges like the old novices did. And yeah, I think they should shuffle, they should change. Because what happens is the extra test, by the time you get to the extra test, it's almost like they're scraping for questions. And so they put some stuff in there covering bizarre modes that the majority of people will never do, like fast scan television or spread spectrum or some of that, where you actually have to know more things than just a definition of a term. The actual difference between general and extra gets you a little bit more frequencies. If you're not a DXer or a contester, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I forget what country it was. I heard someone talking a couple of weeks ago, and they had varying power levels. I mean, like starting out at 10 watts, and then the next level license lets you have 100, and I think the top license you could have 400 watts. There's always that kind of thing too that they could throw in there. But anyway, and I have a KW, same brand as your radio, a KW dummy mode that I bought many, many years ago, and that I've got hooked up on a tuner here, and that's my, I'll say, normal HF dummy mode when I need one. I throw a switch and switch that in. So, there's, even though that's a resistor in a metal box, but still, there's a couple pieces of their equipment here in town. I'll send it back to you now. This is WV9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. And the way you speak of it is probably just a resistor in a box, but I wonder if that's one with a meter or something else on it. I wonder what it looks like if it's... trying to think. It's been a long time since I looked at any of this stuff to recall what other accessories match the stuff that I have. The one that I have is not the common one that most people that have this brand of equipment have. And I think the 2000V is the one that everybody else has, and it's different. It's definitely high quality stuff, but it's not Drake, it's not Collins. It's definitely Collins inspired, I'll tell you that. You can look right at it and see that they were trying to build stuff that looks at least like Collins here. That's pretty obvious, but in fact, it's kind of ironic. I've got a power amplifier. Well, you've probably seen these. It's a Bandit brand, and it's a Hunter brand, and the model is a Bandit 2000C, and it matches my KW2000A very well because both of them are designed to sit alongside Collins gear, or at least look like Collins gear. So it's kind of ironic. that these two things match. I've got to look. I think the power supply that I have might have a dummy load in it. I should, when you guys are talking again, I should take a look and see. I don't know if I can see enough of it to see that. I know it had something more than just a power supply. Maybe it was just a power supply and a speaker. That could be. Anyway, the different country where they have the different power levels. I do believe that is UK. I forget what their classes are called. One of them is foundation. I know that. I don't remember what the other one or other multiple ones are, but that's precisely what you were talking about. They have different power levels for their different privileges, which is kind of interesting. I always wondered how they actually enforce that, but I suppose they probably do. I don't know. I was going to make another comment on the technician privileges on HF. I guess all I'll say is, they don't use, for the most part, there's a very small minority of them that actually use the HF privileges that they have, the old novice privileges, which I think is a shame. I don't use any of that either. I don't do CW, which I probably should. I think we all should for some amount, I think, but maybe that's just my opinion. And anyway, I hope I've covered enough of what you were saying that Jerry can pick up on what it is, because I did not do a very good job of relaying idea for idea everything that you said here. So I'll turn it over now to Jerry, K9FI from KC9UDX.
Okay, Matt, K9FI. And I noticed the delay you got there, and now I'm going to start hearing myself. It sounds like a duck. Yeah, I got you on the computer now, and so we'll see how Dave sounds, and I'll be able to hear him for what he's talking about. But what's interesting is the technician stuff. They don't even use the 2 meters that they have, and I think most of them end up buying a $25 ball ring, and that's about as far as they go. Now if they're going to do, and the other thing I think is what bothers me most, a lot of hams that are new don't have houses, they live in condos, so they got all the condo restrictions, and that makes it really difficult if you're going to do any HF operating other than if you're going to go operating your car, and that's the only other way. But the HF is a lot more expensive to get into than buying a $25 ball frame and working through it with here. So we'll see how many of them really do it, because it's interesting all the years. I can remember before the technicians had license privileges on 10 meters. I should say when they got on 10 meters, there were quite a few down there, but lately, of course, with the 10 meters being in such bad condition, nobody's really on there. But when it was, obviously they could work all over the world, and now they got some quite a bit of room on 100 kilocycles from 21 350 to 21 450, and they got about 100 kilocycles on 40, and I think quite a bit on 80. So now they have to go out and put up real antennas, whereas the HF UHF is a little thick, compared to. First, we'll see how many of them really get on that have regular stations, but maybe it'll motivate some of them to get on the air, and maybe in the end it won't be so bad. But it's kind of annoying that some of us had to do a lot of work to get our license, and now I guess the way the world is today, you don't want to offend anybody, and let's just give it to them, and then it'll be like it, use it. And the problem is, what I'm afraid of is you're going to get a bunch of jerks on there that are going to cause a lot of trouble, but hopefully I'm wrong. So with that, Matt, I'll get off my soapbox and turn it back to you, K905.
All right, thank you, Jerry. And it's no problem. It's good to talk about this stuff. I hope so too. That is a concern. You get effectively people like what we're familiar with on CB, who don't really care about the rules. But I'm always been a firm believer that the bad people are always in the minority, no matter what. Sometimes the good people are the quieter voices, but there are many more of them. And even CB as a good example. If you turn on the CB these days, you just don't hear all of those malcontents that you used to always hear. There's actually what sounds like reasonable conversations on there, which is something, I've only heard that in recent years. In the past, when I turned on a CB, I never heard anything like that. Never anything of the sort. When I was a teenager and we would try to communicate with each other on the CB just because we had them in our cars, you couldn't do it because there was always somebody jamming you or somebody just being totally obnoxious and making you want to turn the radio off. So that's changed a lot. Every once in a while, I haven't done this in years, and I should do this again. Every once in a while, at just the right time of night, pretty reliably. Sometimes it's for seconds, sometimes it's for minutes, sometimes it's for hours. But it happens all the time, and I think because nobody ever bothers to try this, nobody realizes this, but there's like a direct conduit from here to somewhere in Texas on 10 meters. If you can actually find somebody that's actually on the air, you can reliably have good 10-meter communications, just even at this part of the solar cycle. But you've got to find that sweet spot at the time, the right time of day, and it's got to last long enough to make contact. And of course, like I said, you've got to have somebody on the other end that's actually got a radio turned on. When I used to work second shift, I would come home from work and turn on 10 meters and play around with that, and it was a lot of fun. Now that I work third shift, I can't do that anymore. Something else. We were talking about privileges and things, and antennas, and you mentioned people living in condos where they have restrictions on antennas. My town is no longer a town. We have a village, and of course, when they became a village, they enacted all new village code. It's much simpler, but it's much more restrictive in every way. You can almost do nothing here in the village anymore. And one of the things that they have outright banned is communication. They didn't say towers. I think they said structures or something like that, which I would have to believe my masts fall under that. And of course, they would be grandfathered in because I built them before they put this stuff into place. But it would be interesting to take them to task because what they've done is illegal in the state of Wisconsin, at least as far as amateurs are concerned. They can ban commercial transmitting apparatus and whatever, but they cannot stop us from putting up antennas. Not at that level of government anyway. I would almost like to go to a village hall meeting. I guess they still call them town hall meetings. I don't know. I would like to go to one of those and bring it up that they are in violation of state law. But I really don't want to open a can of worms. I know that any time you do any kind of dealings with those people, you open a big can of worms that, in my experience, you just always regret. So anyway, we are running out of time here now. I'll check one more time if we have anybody that wants to come in last minute here on the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please.
W9JCCL, wait my turn.
All right, there's Frank, W9JCC. Do we have anybody else? All right, hearing none, I'll turn it over to you, Frank, first, and we'll call this the 7-3 round because that's where I was just about to go anyway. W9JCC from KC9UDX.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I don't know who else is on there. I completely forgot about the net tonight, and I think I heard Steve put out a QST about the net, and I scrambled down here to turn the radio on. So everything's fine here. We kind of busy the last couple of weeks, and I guess I will turn it back to you, Matt, and we'll pass it along our 73s to whoever's in there. KC9UDX, W9JCC 73.
All right, thank you, Frank. Well, I'm glad you popped in here anyway. It's good to have you in here, as always. So I'll say 7-3 to you, Frank. And then we'll go to Dave, WB9BWP, 7-3 round from KC9UDX.
Okay. No, anything there to Frank? Hey, better late than never. I mean, I'm usually good at that too, and see, bring those numbers up. And, Matt, you don't ever want to ask questions of, government type, because you never know where that's going to go. I haven't looked lately, but here in Muskego, there's a whole chapter in their zoning that deals with communication towers. But at the very top of that chapter, it says amateur radio is exempt from all of these rules. So I don't know how that ever happened, but it's been there as long as I know. Now, of course, that's all different when you move into the new fancy developments. There's one just up the road from me here a little bit. Houses have been springing up there over the last year and a half or so. And went over there just to look around one time, and they've got all sorts of restrictions. I mean, even down to, you can't put your garbage cans out before whatever, 7 in the morning or something, and you can't leave a car in the driveway overnight, stuff like that. Not only that, houses are ridiculously expensive too. Anyhow, 73 to everyone there and anybody else that was listening and afraid to speak up. And hopefully we'll be here next month again. And so, with that, I'll send it back to net control. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. And I do know what you're saying. I am surrounded by subdivisions like that. One of the interesting things when I bought my house, I was looking for a place that was not in a subdivision, and I did just that. There are 2 houses that are not in subdivisions in the what used to be town of Waukesha, and I'm in one of them. My neighbor is the other one. We are outside of the subdivisions, which the people in the subdivisions don't seem to think that we are, and they want us to follow their restrictions, and we just don't. But our old town code, when it was a town, did have exactly an exemption for amateurs, and it was attributed to an amateur that used to live, or probably still does live in the town. I remember finding that, reading about how the changes went in the code over the years, but that was very specific, and our new village code does not have that. Anyway, we'll go to Jerry. Jerry K9FI, 7-3 round from KC9UDX.
Okay, Matt, this is K9FI. Good evening to Frank here. You're coming in. You're the loudest guy in the whole bunch. Well, anyhow, Matt, if you want to check something out, about 10 years ago, the federal government passed a public, they call it PBR1, Public Radio Bill number 1, and then they passed it off to the state, and the state had to adopt it, and then the state said the local communities, like my town of Brookfield, they had to take it up as their business, and if they adopted it, then they had certain guidelines as far as what they could do with the antenna restrictions. They couldn't really totally eliminate them unless you had a covenant. And what's interesting, I was talking to a guy about covenant, and he was a lawyer, and he told me, well, covenants don't last forever. They said they can last 8 or 10 years, and they may have to get you to agree with them or modify them. So I was just saying, if you want to have some fun reading, read about covenants and subdivisions because I thought they were lifetime, when apparently not. So if you get enough people that disagree with something, like some of these are getting nuts about how long your grass can be, and a head can't have your car in the driveway, which is totally insane as far as I'm concerned. People do live here, you know, and unless they think it's a resale value, and that's all we're looking. But when I bought my house, I was not looking at resale value as the main thing. I was looking at a place where I could have a shed where I could have tools in it, or a wood pile for my fireplace and all that stuff. But anyhow, you might want to be curious and probably to your townships out there and see what they say about public bill rate, PBR number 1, which is the public bill number 1, and to see if they ever did adopt it. But in the town of Brookfield here, W9, KC9CEL, Rich, just when he asked me about putting up the tower, and I told him what I did. I went to the building engineer, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he came over and I told him this is where I'm going to put it. He just said to me, okay, he says, you don't want to go much more than 50 feet. He says, make sure it doesn't fall off of your property or fall on your house. And that's all the comment he gave. And my friend Rich, who lives a little south of me, did the same thing, and went over and asked him just recently. It's the same agreement, but now we're getting a new engineer, so might have one of these guys that loves to have rules, so we'll see what happens. But I assume, like you said, since I've been here, since the tent has been up for 4 years, I don't know if I have to do any rules, any antenna changing, unless maybe I make a stipulation if it ever falls down, you gotta go through the whole permit again and get people to sign off on the fact that you're going to have a amateur radio tower. Well, anyhow, enough of that. I'll say my step in trees, and it's nice hearing Dave over the internet, K905.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. And I am aware of PRB1, and our state has adopted that. Not all states have, as far as I'm aware. And the state is very very clear that municipalities cannot enact laws that overrule that. So that's where I would, if I have a confrontation with them, that's what I'm going to bring up. But like I said, I would prefer not to do that unless I have to. One nice thing about living here, and this may change being the village, and the fact that government wants to become big government. In the past, at least, they were very slow to enforce anything. They wouldn't get on anybody's case about violating town code unless somebody filed a written complaint, which I think is pretty fair. There's no point in going after somebody for any of these regulations unless the people around them find a problem with it, in my opinion. And so I think that works really well. So I hope that continues. Anyway, I do have to get going here. It's past 9 o'clock, and I do have to run. So thank you guys for being here. And I will say this concludes the 2 a.m. net. Feel free to rag chew on this frequency after my transmission, but I will be taking the YouTube stream down. We will meet again on the 8th of September. Until then, this is KC9UDX 73, and good night.